Remark. I feel honored to coordinate this workshop on behalf of the American Council of Learned Societies, ACLS, and the Center for Arts and Indigenous Studies, Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida University, Lapai. It is an opportunity to meet and mentor junior scholars, which we have, which of course is one of our ambitions or desires as scholars. The ACLS, through its African Humanities quality research in the humanities across Africa, through the instruments of postdoctoral fellowship, research proposal workshop, manuscript development workshop, mentorship scheme, and publication series. The AHP has existed since 2009, and more than 400 early career scholars have benefited from it in sub-Saharan Africa. It is our hope that there will be more benefiting from the AHP this year, especially applicants who are participating in this workshop. The reason why the ACLS funds workshops such as these is applicants win the AHP fellowship. I therefore urge the participants to ensure they are under the mentorship of the AHP mentors even after the workshop. I would like to thank all the participants who are from across Nigeria and beyond. We have a participant from South Africa for your interest in the workshop. My sincere thanks go to the AHP mentors, Professor DPO, Professor Musilla, Professor Emielu, and Professor Okoye. These are among the few world-class African scholars living and working on the continent today, and we are proud of them. For their support, I would like to thank the ACLS and the management of IBB University, Lapai, led by the Vice Chancellor, Professor Kasim Adamu. Last but not least, I would like to thank other people who have contributed to the making of this day, especially my ICT team, talking of Mr. Yusman Bala and Mr. Abdullah Ikawu for their efforts. To those who have supported us from the background, especially staff of the ICT Directorate, I say thank you. I hope that the participants will derive the maximum benefits from this workshop as we look forward to seeing them as the next winners of the AHP Fellowship. Thank you very much for your time. So with this opening remark, I will call on, let us quickly introduce some of our dignitaries from the university before we introduce the AHP mentors. We have in our midst the registrar of the university, Alhaji Ango Abdullahi. You're welcome, sir. And we are expecting more members of the management, including the Vice Chancellor, to join us later on. So the Vice Chancellor has a remark to make, and he will make it once he is here, or somebody will make it on his behalf. Now, let us know our AHP mentors. I can see Professor Musilla has joined us. Is Professor DPO here too? Sister Dominic, have you joined us? Okay, the HOD of English, Dr. Margaret Agu, will read out the brief profiles of the AHP mentors.
It is an honor to introduce our guests for this auspicious event. And the convener, Professor Emmanuel Sulegia, has gathered world-class scholars to this event. Want to read the brief profiles of the AHP. It is a great honor to introduce our guests for this auspicious event, Lapai AHP Proposal Preparation Workshop. The convener has gathered world-class scholars to contribute to this event. It is my pleasure to read their profiles, the AHP mentors. First on the list is Dominic Dipio. Dominic Dipio is a professor of literature and film in the College of Humanities and Social Sciences, Makerere University. She has received several distinguished fellowships and academic awards and has published widely in her interdisciplinary research fields in literature, film, folklore, ritual, and gender studies. As a filmmaker, she has participated as a jury member at several international film festivals. Dipio belongs to the first cohort of the AHP awardees, 2009. She is a reviewer, member of the AHP Selection Committee and the AHP Series Editorial Board, as well as the Secretary of the ISC. Next on the list is Grace Musilla. Grace A. Musilla is an associate professor in the Department of African Literature at the University of the Witwatersrand, Johannesburg. Her teaching and research centers on Eastern and Southern African literatures, African popular cultures, and gender in Africa. She has published journal articles and chapters in these areas. She is also the editor of Wangari Maathai's Registers of Freedom, HSRC Press 2020, author of A Death Retold in Truth and Rumor, Kenya, Britain, and the Julie Award Murder, Boydell and Brewer, 2015, and a co-editor of Rethinking Eastern African Intellectual Landscapes, Africa World Press, 2012. She serves as an AHP mentor and also coordinates the AHP Connect community platform jointly with Dr. Eric Ochere of the University of Cape Coast. Another scholar on the list is Austin Emelu. Austin Emelu is a professor and visiting scholar at the School of Performing Arts, University of Ghana, and also a visiting professor to the International Library of African Music, Rhodes University in South Africa. He is a fellow of the AHP since 2011, an advisor since 2014, and a presidential fellow in 2019. Last but not the least is our own Oyeniyi Okoye. Oyeniyi Okoye is a professor of English with specialization in literature in English at Obafemi Awolowo University, Ile-Ife, Nigeria, where he was head of English from 2014 to 2018. He is the editor of Nigerian Journal of Oral Literatures and an article editor with Postcolonial Text. He has held the Harry Opiema Visiting Fellowship, the Alexander von Humboldt Research Fellowship, the Codestria Grant for Advanced Research, the British Academy Visiting Fellowship, the Cambridge Africa Collaborative Research Fellowship, and numerous travel grants. Professor Okoye is involved in many mentoring initiatives. He has been an advisor on the African Humanities Program for about 10 years and has been actively involved with the annual Summer Institute of the Ife Institute of Advanced Studies. He is experienced in developing institutional grant proposals and facilitating academic mentoring programs. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Dr. Agu. Thank you very much, Professor Agu, HOD of English. Has Sister Dominic joined us? Sister Dominic from Makerere, are you with us? Okay, so we are expected to take a talk from her, but if she's not with us now, we will take a talk from Professor Musilla, who is with us already. And then when she joins us, she will give us our talk. So Professor Musilla, are you ready to go?
Morning, Prof. Yes, I am ready to go. Morning,
so
everybody.
Good. So you are going to use PowerPoint, so you can, from your end, control it.
So, Prof, I eventually changed my mind. I'm just going to talk to my ideas.
Okay.
Because I thought it might work better. So yeah, so
okay.
There won't be a PowerPoint for today.
Okay, thank you very much.
And everybody can hear me clearly?
I can hear you.
Okay, wonderful. I'll try and keep my eye on the chat, but it might be tricky. So if I get lost or if anybody can't hear me, just speak up. But also as I go along, it might be a good idea for participants to make use of the chat platform. Just throw in all questions and thoughts and any queries as I go along, and then we can turn to those at the end of my presentation. So first of all, my sincere gratitude to Professor Egia for hosting this platform and for inviting us to contribute and to really just put our heads together around some of the work that our colleagues across the continent are working on and some of the ideas they have in mind towards applying for the HP fellowship. So I framed my talk with the assumption that Professor DePiero would already have spoken, but hopefully there won't be too many gaps in what I have to say. So I'm going to be speaking to the core of the AHP proposal. And the proposal is made up of, first of all, the title, and then you've got the main thesis, then you've got the body of the proposal, the literature and sources, methods, significance, and work plan. And all these items are on the program, so that's why you don't need to list them down. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to work through each item and just share my perspectives on each of these elements of it. And maybe before I go to a breakdown of these ideas, perhaps the first thing to think about is what a good proposal is within the context of the African Humanities Program. And in my understanding, first of all, it needs to be clearly a humanities project, because the initiative funds humanities research. So it's got to be clearly within the context of the humanities and not outside of the humanities. So that should be self-evident. The second thing is that you need a clearly articulated end product. What exactly are you working towards? So this could be either converting a PhD dissertation into a book. It could be generating a range of journal articles. It could be generating a range of academic book chapters. But you need to be explicit about what exactly is it that you're working towards. I'm turning this thesis into a book. I'm planning to produce 2 journal articles. I'm planning to produce 3 journal articles. That needs to be clear. The end product that you're working towards needs to be clearly articulated. Related to that, then, you need to have an adequate scope for what you intend to achieve. So if you're saying you're planning on producing a book, then your proposal needs to have enough substance to be able to sustain a book. Because if you're setting out to do an academic book, but the scope of your project suggests that what you have in mind can only provide sufficient material for a journal article, then already we are sitting with a problem. So there needs to be a certain coherence between the product you're working towards and the scope of your proposed project that you're putting on the table. Then you need to have a sharply articulated focus, as well as core research questions that you're setting out to address. So your proposal, when somebody reads their proposal, they need to have a clear sense of this is the core, this is the focus of this proposal. These are the questions that this research project is seeking to address. It mustn't be vague to your reader. It also needs to demonstrate adequate familiarity with current and relevant scholarship on the subject you're working on. And I'll talk a bit more about this when I turn to the literature and sources. It also needs to be systematically, to feature a clear and systematic presentation of your arguments. So your ideas shouldn't be all over the place. And I'm sure, again, these are things that should be self-evident for all the colleagues in the room now, because we all have PhDs, because the HP call is specifically for postdoctoral programs. So hopefully we all have PhDs and we have a clear understanding of what a coherent and systematic presentation of an argument looks like. And then lastly, and very important, is that it needs to be explicit that there is an original contribution to knowledge that your project is making. Because ultimately the larger mission here is taking forward African humanities scholarship. So we need to be able to justify the investment in time, in energy, in money, in all kinds of resources. Why are we investing all of this? Why are you investing a year of your time? Why should the AHP fund this project? It needs to be explicit that this is the original contribution to knowledge that this project is setting out to make. And some of these ideas then will become evident as I work through the different parts of the proposal. So first of all, the title. A lot of the time many of us tend to select the title last, and we tend to do a very rush job on the title. But actually that is a problem. What we need to take the title very seriously. We need to pay very serious attention to how we title our project, because that tells your reader a whole lot about the entire project even before they get into it. So your title needs to be concise and informative. It should not have any unnecessary padding. So again, one useful trick is to keep going back to your title and ask yourself, what word is unnecessary? What word can be condensed? What phrases can be condensed? So it needs to be as crystal clear as possible, but also as concise as possible. Because generally long titles tend to actually point towards a certain degree of lack of clarity about what exactly you're planning to do. The second thing that your title needs to do is that it needs to signal the basics of the project. What, when, where. At the very least, I need to be able to pick up very quickly from the title of your proposal what it's about, when the period, if the period is important, and a lot of the time that's important in the humanities, and where. It shouldn't just be a floating and vague title. Then the second part of the proposal is the main thesis. And I like to think about the main thesis as almost the equivalent of an abstract, but not quite an abstract, but close to an abstract in the sense that it's a very distilled and condensed version of the entire project. So part of what your main thesis of your proposal needs to do is that it needs to provide a sharp summary of your project. And by a sharp summary, I mean it needs to be clear to your reader the moment they look through your main thesis. What is the aim of the project? What are the core questions that it's setting out to investigate? And what is the original contribution to knowledge that this project is going to make? So straight away, from reading your main thesis, I need to be able to pick up these basics. This is what this project is aiming to do. These are the questions it's setting out to address. And this is why, this is the ways in which it's making an original contribution to knowledge in the field within which you're working. And for you to be able to do a good main thesis, you need to have a very solid understanding of your project. You need to know your project very coherently. You need to have put in a lot of thought into it. And you need to be able to literally talk to somebody in literally a minute or two to be able to give a very condensed version of your project. So what I find useful sometimes is a little exercise that I also set for myself as well when I'm working on an article or a book chapter or any kind of project. And it goes like this: I need to be able to answer in one sentence, I am studying A in order to find out B to help my reader understand C. So I'll repeat that again, and I'm going to ask that, and maybe what I can do is I'll actually type it out on the chat platform. Okay, so I put it on the chat platform, but for people who are on the ground, the sentence reads, I am studying dash in order to find out dash to help my reader understand dash. So it's a useful test to set for yourself. And a lot of the time, obviously, our work shifts as we work on it, as we go along, it grows. Normally, scholarly work is not, it's very organic, and your ideas shift and shape themselves up as you go along. But it's a useful exercise to keep asking yourself as you're working on any kind of project. This is not only in relation to the AHP application, it's in any research scholarly project. It's a useful trick to just ask yourself so that you're very clear that you can be able to present your project in a very concise manner. I'm studying A in order to find out B to help my reader understand C. Because if you're able to present that in a condensed manner, then you literally have given a very solid summary of what your project is. And then the body of the proposal, Again, and one of the things you will see is that there's a certain degree of repetitiveness in the different parts of the proposal, which would be recognizable to you also based on your PhD proposal, for instance, that it's a very complex machinery that is inter-articulated, and different parts speak to the other parts. But at the end of the day, there's a certain sense of coherence that the different, that in a way, a certain thread that holds the entire document together. So when we turn to the body of the proposal, here what you're expected to do is to provide a detailed exploration of your project and its background. You're supposed to give some kind of contextualization around, this is what I'm working on, this is where I'm coming from in asking this set of questions. And essentially then it's an opportunity for you to further unpack your project's research questions and the larger implications of those questions for your field of study. So in the body, you're sort of fleshing out your project, you're sort of signaling how, in a way, the ways in which your set of questions that you signaled in the main thesis fits into the larger field of study and the implications for the field of study in the body of your proposal, which then ties into the range of issues that you're going to explore in the section under literature and sources. And again, like I said, these different parts flow into each other very smoothly as you work, and you will see the ways in which they speak to each other back and forth. So under the literature and sources, and hopefully these should be the easiest part for us, because we've all had to do a literature review for our various PhD projects, in addition possibly to publications that we've worked on. But again, I will be revisiting things that you already know, but sometimes we relearn things that we already knew in a different way. So the first thing for us to understand is, why do we need, what is the value of a literature and sources section in a proposal? And part of the point behind it is to locate your contribution within the research area in which you belong. So, because we're never speaking into a vacuum, we're always joining ongoing conversations. Our work has implications, and it's in conversation with other work that precedes us and other work that will come after our work. So the point behind the literature and sources section then is to locate your contribution within the research area and to signal an awareness that you're joining and participating in an ongoing set of scholarly conversations. You're not just speaking in a vacuum. And so to be able to then signal this participation in an ongoing set of conversations, you need to be able to demonstrate your familiarity with the field within which you're operating. You need, and by familiarity or mastery of the field, part of what we mean is your literature and sources signals an awareness of the broad strokes of the general agreed opinion. This is the general set of agreed opinions on this topic. These are the contestations. These are the knotty areas, the areas that are still sparking a lot of controversy or contestations around this, within this particular field. These are the prevailing theories or ways in which this field has engaged with the question that I'm going to engage. These are the key questions that have preoccupied my field. And these are the approaches, basically. So in a way, part of what your literature and sources does is that it maps for your reader the landscape of the field within which you belong. And it takes your reader along this landscape and signals, this is the state of the debate as of now. And simultaneously then, this is the base from which I'm proceeding with my work. I'm aware of the conversation, the ongoing conversation. I'm aware of what's already been said, and this is the launch pad for my intervention. So essentially what you're doing then is you're acknowledging previous work in the field. You're acknowledging that you're joining an ongoing conversation. You're also identifying in the process the possible gaps or points of intervention where then your work can step in. So again, it's not It's not merely to show off that, look, I've read so many books. The value here is I'm signaling that this is my understanding of the conversation as of now, and I am also identifying what the gap in the field is. So this is part of where we are going towards. We're going towards identifying the possible gaps or possible points of intervention or possible contradictions in the literature that invite further exploration of the topic. And ultimately then, part of what the literature and resources and sources section allows you to do is to illustrate the relevance and the freshness of your contribution. It helps you to be able to clearly map out that this is what the landscape looks like, this is where I'm intervening. Okay, so there's a number of things, and we can talk in a whole lot of detail during the Q&A and conversation session, but there's a certain number of things to note when we're putting together the literature and sources. First of all, it's just to be gracious in how we deal with other scholars' work. No matter how weak we consider it, no matter how problematic we consider it, there is need for finding that balance between robust critical engagement with preceding scholars' work without being dismissive. Because personally, my personal principle is there's no such thing as completely useless work, that even the most flawed work is useful in the ways in which it points to us the gaps and the problems of different approaches to scholarship, for instance. So it's about dealing critically and robustly engaging with existing scholarship, but without simply dismissing. And essentially the spirit here is that we are joining ongoing conversations. And of course, there's always that whole saying about hindsight being, super perfect. And so there's many things that if I'm sitting here reading, I work on gender, for instance, if I'm sitting in 2020 with the benefit of all the scholarship that's been done, then when I read an article that was published in 1960, there's a chance that I might be dismissive of that article. I might think it's thin, it's not sophisticated and all that. But if I read that article within the context of its time, then there's something I'm able to get out of there beyond simply dismissing it as, oh, these people didn't know these clever theories that I now know. So it's about that spirit of generosity, ultimately, in how we work, we do scholarship, which is not the same as dishonesty. I hope we know the distinction there. That it's not the same as, again, hyping up work that is simply substandard. So then the other thing is, and something that I always caution my mentees around is we shouldn't be about fault finding in order to engineer gaps in the scholarship. So we can't be running around saying, yeah, this person wrote about this, but they didn't write about this. Or this person wrote about this, but they didn't write about this. It's about, it's a very, or basically justifying, rationalizing our project by saying, oh yeah, nobody has written about this. It may be true, but there might be a good reason why nobody has written about it. So your rationale for your work needs to be stronger than just nobody has said this or nobody has written this. I think that nobody has said this is a very weak rationale for why you're doing something. So there needs to be a stronger reason, a stronger motivation for why you're embarking on that project than just the fact that nobody has embarked on it. Then turning to the methods part of your proposal, essentially the methods asks you, how will you go about exploring the questions that you're setting out to explore? And your methods must be appropriate to your data and to the questions you're asking. Again, that sense of coherence, that sense of resonance, that there needs to be a certain resonance between these are the questions I'm asking, these are the methods that I'm using, and this is the data that I'm working with. Because if there's a mismatch, if you're using methods that are in a mismatch with your data, then already the integrity of your findings is compromised, because it will not follow from the data that you're sitting with. So ultimately, that linkage between this is my data, these are the questions I'm asking, and therefore, in other words, you need to take instructions from your questions and your data to determine what methods are you going to use. Now, in our case, then, especially for the AHP application, if you're building on doctoral work, then clearly there is no further need for field work unless you can demonstrate that actually my doctoral work did not cover 1, 2, 3 aspects, and I am going back to the field to address this part. So again, your application cannot just be saying, yeah, I will do field work during this period, yet you've already indicated that your project is actually building on your PhD work, because then the question for me as a reader becomes, why are we going back to the field when our mission here is to convert this PhD into publishable articles, or to convert this PhD into a book? So depending, the method section will be determined by what exactly your mission is in your project. What exactly are you planning on doing? And so don't feel pressurized to claim that you're going to go to the field, because sometimes you actually don't need to go back to the field. You can just signal there that I already did the field work, I already have a draft of I already have data from the field work, and this is how I'm going to be analyzing the data. So in a way, the point here is to make sure that the claims you're making under the methodology resonate with your questions, your data, as well as the game plan here, what you're planning to do or what you're promising to do in the context of this, this fellowship. And then the significance of your project, which is another important section in your proposal. And this is almost similar to the rationale of your proposal, again, going back to the PhD proposal, but slightly different in the sense that under the rationale, we normally give a rationale for the choices we are making. I'm studying, let's say I'm studying fictional representations of environmental questions in contemporary Nigerian writing, then I need to give a rationale for why fiction and not life writing, for instance, why fiction, why the genre of fiction and not poetry and not life writing, all of that. And then why not contemporary Nigerian writing instead of earlier Nigerian writing, and why Nigeria? So I'm giving a motivation for each of those. But the slight difference with the AHP application is that it's similar to the rationale, but it's the relevance of this study within the larger context of scholarly production. So why is this project necessary? Why is this knowledge, the knowledge that will be generated by asking these questions, why is it necessary? So the point here is to validate the investment in time, in effort, in money, in intellectual labor, in investigating the topic that you're setting out to investigate. And then, and I see I'm running tight on time, so I'll quickly wrap up with a quick discussion on the work plan. And the work plan essentially is intended to map out, hypothetically, if you get the HP fellowship, how are you going to work towards attaining the goal that you said you're working towards? So the one thing to do here is to provide a realistic time frame that, again, is clearly aligned with the promises that you've made that you're working towards. And for your time frame to be realistic, you need to be very clear in your mind about what you're promising to do and what it entails. So if you're promising to do 3 journal articles, then your work plan needs to reflect an awareness of the process of journal article writing, of the process of converting thesis chapters into journal articles, and to be able to then budget sufficient time for those processes, right from the process of reworking those chapters all the way to the process of submission to the journal. Obviously, beyond the submission to the journal, you're not in control of the processes that the journal goes through in terms of peer review, feedback, and all of that. That's not in your hands. But ultimately, you need to be able to plan that I'm starting here and I'll take 3 months for this and 2 months for this and 6 weeks for this. And by this time, I will have completed my 3 journal articles. Or if I'm doing a book manuscript, then I am clear in my mind what it entails to convert a thesis into a book. And these are the steps that I'm going to work towards. So ultimately, your work plan must match the project's target. And at the same time, you can indicate what has already been done by the time you will be starting the fellowship. So again, if you're proposing to convert a thesis into a book or to convert a thesis into journal articles, then you again remind your reader that, look, the thesis already exists and I'm currently rereading my thesis and updating the literature and that sort of thing, and reading around what new scholarship has come out between the period I completed my PhD and now. So ultimately then, the things you're going to be doing will be determined by what exactly you're setting out to do, what your project, if it's a completely new project. And once again, I hope my consistent reference to your thesis does not make you feel pressured to only apply on the basis of your dissertation. The HP is receptive to all manner of projects. It can be a completely new project that you're starting on, in which case then you declare it explicitly that these are an entirely new project and this is what I'm planning on doing. And obviously, if it's a completely new project, then the previous topics that I've been talking about will make different demands on you compared to what is happening when you're extracting from your dissertation. So I think the last thing I'll say, and then I'll stop there and we can have a conversation, is please read through your proposal over and over and over again, clean it up, edit it, avoid any shoddiness in your work, because at this level of scholarship, it reflects very badly on you to submit work that has typos, that has grammatical errors, that has hanging sentences, that has poor formatting of references. They're just certain basics that we shouldn't even be having that conversation at this level. Those are conversations we have with undergraduate students about, you reference consistently. You choose a reference style and you stick with it, don't switch back and forth. So there's certain basics that it shouldn't even occur, it shouldn't come up. Ultimately, you want your proposal, by the time it lands on an assessor's desk, they're dealing with you at the level of ideas. They're not dealing with you at the level of, oh, this person couldn't even edit their work properly, or this person can't even stick to one reference style in their literature review. And the way to do that is to look over your work over and over and over again. And sometimes what I find useful is actually printing out my work and then sitting with a pencil and cleaning it up, because sometimes the screen is very deceptive and things look very clean on the screen, but it's not actually, when you read it in print, you pick up a whole lot of things. So ultimately, you need to put forward the best work possible, because all that the reader has in front of them is your proposal. They don't know you're this brilliant person. They don't know you're this disciplined person. They don't know you're this fantastic academic. They need to distill all of that from the proposal that you've submitted. So you need to make sure your proposal is really a solid ambassador of your potential. Okay, I think I'll stop there and then we can have a bit of a conversation. So I'll hand back to you, Professor.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, Professor Musilla, for that excellent presentation. We will have time for conversation later on. I would like to know if Professor DPO has joined us. Professor DPO, are you with us now? Okay, let me quickly also introduce our one of our dignitaries from within here, the DVC academic. Is it American? Yeah, the DVC academic, Professor Mohammed Ali Yupaiko. And at this juncture, he is going to present the VC's opening remark. So on behalf of the VC of the IBB University, Professor A.K. Adamu, Professor Paiko will present a short remark, and thereafter we'll continue. Professor Paiko, sir. Yes.
Yeah, go ahead. You can speak.
Okay, good morning, everyone. I'm delighted to be here and to represent the Vice Chancellor of Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida University in the person of Professor Abu Qasim Adamu. Obviously, from all indications, I am not Professor Abu Qasim Adamu, but I represent him this very morning to present IBBU's welcome remark at this very auspicious moment. Let me go ahead to now read our Vice Chancellor's opening remark. It gives me a very great pleasure to make this opening remark and declare this AHP proposal preparation workshop open. Of course, as you all know, it is the first time that an AHP activity is taking place here at IBB University, Lapai. We give thanks to the Center for Arts and Indigenous Studies for this very, very wonderful opportunity. The African Humanities Program, AHP, is run by the American Council of Learned Society and generously supported by the Carnegie Corporation of the United States of America. The main objective of the AHP, as we all know, one, to encourage and enable the production of new knowledge and new approaches to research. Two, to strengthen the capacity of early career researchers and faculty at African universities. And three, to advance the humanities by establishing networks for scholarly communication throughout Africa and with Africanists worldwide. These are quite very challenging tasks that AHP has taken for itself, and we cannot thank them enough. We at IBB University are quite happy to associate with AHP because we see a meeting point between the goals of the AHP and that of our great university, the Ibrahim Badamasi Babangida University, Lapai. IBB-UL is emerging as a research leader in Nigeria. If you've been following events, you will hear that very clearly. In the sciences and the humanities, our scholars and researchers are increasingly making their marks at the global stage. This will be testified to by especially TED Fund in Nigeria. Our collaboration with the AHP now offers us an opportunity to strengthen our humanities research base. We are going to ensure this opportunity is fully realized, and that can be seen already from the number of participants at this occasion. Let me use this opportunity to especially thank AHP mentors who are here to facilitate this workshop, whether they are here or on their way. We feel that we should mention some specific names. If your name don't mean you're not important, but we just want to single out these individuals. The first on our list is Professor Dominic Ipio of Makerere University, Kampala. If he's here, we are really very grateful to him. Professor Grace Musilla of the Whitewater University, Johannesburg. Professor Austin Emelu of the University of Ghana, Legon, Professor Oyemi Okunoye of Obafemi University, Obafemi Awolowo University today here in Nigeria. These are, of course, renowned scholars with global recognition, and they will no doubt greatly impact on the show, as you have already seen from the beginning. Let me also thank the participants from far and wide who come from different parts of this country. I hope that you will make the best of this workshop and you have become ASP mentors as you strive to build your research profiles. Just last but not least,
thank you so much, Professor Paiko, reading the VC's speech. Okay, so has Professor DPO joined us? Are you with us now, Professor DPO? If Professor DPO has not joined us, Professor...
Excuse me, Sule, I am right here. Hello?
Okay.
I am right here.
Sister Dominic, you're welcome.
Thank you. I'm really sorry.
You're welcome.
I thought, am I late? I am very late, right?
Yeah, not very late. You are right on time to give your talk.
Yes. Wow, I'm sorry. Because I think I mistook the hour. I thought we begin at the Ugandan time 1, but it looks like you started at midday.
Okay,
Sorry,
yeah.
but
So,
I'm ready.
yeah, I think it's okay, Prof. So
okay,
can you,
thank you.
Can you take over? Can you start now?
Yes. Let me start by sharing my screen. Can you please enable me to share my screen?
Yeah, you are being enabled now. Just a minute.
Thank you. Thank you. Let me just show myself a bit. Okay. Let me. Can I start?
Go ahead, please.
Go ahead, you can start.
Thank you. Thank you. My very sincere apologies for mistaking the hour, but we can roll from here. I would like to thank Professor Eja for inviting me to be part of this. I'm very happy to be part of the community in Lapai, the AHP family there. I've been asked to talk about the preliminaries of writing an AHP proposal, basically eligibility, choosing research project, gathering data, and choosing a research topic. And my presentation will go as follows. But before I get there, I want to make really preliminary remarks. Let me widen this about what research is all about. Research, since I'm among the first to speak, research generally is basically a systematic and rigorous investigation to generate new knowledge. And this is done with an open mind to solve either a practical or a conceptual problem. And usually new ideas and new theories may emerge as a result of a research project. Another general comment I would like to make is that academic writing definitely is an organic type of research, and different parts of the different parts really form a whole. Sometimes it is very difficult to break them apart and say which parts should come first, because they are really organic and they speak to each other. So the logic of balancing the different parts then becomes a very important component of the researcher's skill. That's by way of preliminary comments I would like to make. Now, right to the topic I'm supposed to address, I've been asked to talk about eligibility in the AHP program. This is a very crucial point. Eligibility is something we often ignore, but it is a very important thing to start any process of application from. You always need to check the details on the relevant website that you are applying to give you the information you need. And I have put here the AHP online application site where you can get all the key information you need. You also need to, understand the frequently asked questions and answers about AHP to enable you to compete competently. And we often do not take this eligibility issue very seriously. And I want to briefly tell you a personal experience to express how really important knowing eligibility is. I'll tell you a little story about how I became a Fulbright. I never planned at that particular time to become one. One of my junior colleagues brought her application to me, seeking reference. And when I studied closely what she wanted to apply for, and indeed she wasted quite some time to write a proposal for that call, I just looked at it and saw that this is not something meant for a junior person who had not even got a master's yet, but it is meant for a senior person like me. and so I just wrote my application within that very short time frame to become a fellow myself, because my colleague had not looked clearly what the eligibility requirements were for that particular application. So the AHP eligibility then is very clearly broken down in terms of applicants' eligibility, in terms of locality. As you know, by now all of you who apply know that there are 5 countries that are participating in this as of now. And then of course, the caliber of applicants may be postdoc or dissertation completion, but for this specific one this year, if you visit the website, it clearly says it is postdoctoral. So issues like inclusion that involves gender balance, particularly encouraging women to apply, is very key. Now, when it comes to eligibility in terms of the discipline, the AHP explains very clearly, and I have sorted this out for highlighting because it's really important for you as you apply right now, that only projects in the humanities are eligible. This you know, I think. And the list of humanities disciplines include anthropology, archaeology, history, studies of fine art and so on. But projects in social sciences, such as economics, sociology, political science, law, and so on, are not eligible unless they are clearly humanistic in their focus, content, and approach. This is important because over the years, there are colleagues who are not specifically in the above defined humanistic discipline, but they have used humanistic approaches to write, and they have written competitive proposals that won the award. So the concern of humanities discipline definitely are not limited to Africa, but it's global. So when you are pitching your idea, well, you are situated in Africa and you are speaking to a particular context, perhaps, but these proposals will have an opening of a global humanistic frame. Now, accepting AHP trust that you will have products clearly stated in your proposal is very important. For postdoctoral, your research does not, you do a standalone research. You are not doing a teamwork. That's clear in the eligibility details. You could do a book manuscript. You could revise your dissertation, but you could also come up with a fresh subject of research. Now, the following definitely are not included among the eligible outcomes. Not write a novel, not an artwork, not film, not, so in other words, the creative outcomes are not really what is required here, but the academic, scholarly articles, and of course, textbooks and journalistic style writings are also not eligible. Now, relative freedom is given by AHP to researchers to work within a certain, framework. It's as long as you can justify the methodology you are using, you are free to do so. There is no prescribed methodology given. However, researchers must be accomplished by 10 to 12 months. And if the work is part of a multi-layered project, it's also important that you state clearly that this is a broader one, but this specific segment is what you are seeking from the AHP. So all applicants are all applications are submitted online. This is very important, and there is a clear address here in case you run into trouble. There is an address to refer to, but you must ensure that you do your application online and no late application is accepted. These are emphases that are so important because many times we tend to do things last moment and you just cannot tell what happens on the last day. That is the deadline. So always ensure you submit your application a little earlier than specified. Now, of course, when your application is written, there is a rigorous process of reviewing it, and usually 3 scholars from different parts of the country, normally not from your own country, are involved in reviewing this. Yes, and after 6 to 7 months, you can expect notification of result. Once you receive this feedback, you may also seek feedback. Should you be selected or should you not be selected? You may seek feedback from AHP so that they give you information to improve, So in terms of country, many times, of course, you guys in Nigeria are doing so well in the AHP application. There are so many of you who have written very successful applications, and that's exactly the spirit of AHP. It's fair competition. There is no quota per country. Everything is done on merit and on the strength of the essay alone, which has to be very clear which has to have mastery of language. It should be well edited. So important to note also is that no applicant on simultaneous fellowship is allowed, and no fellowship can be deferred. You know, you should complete your fellowship within the time frame, and no form of employment during the fellowship year, no travel grants outside the fellowship, except when you are engaged in related things like conferences. Why is this so important? Because as you must have been told in the introductory part of this workshop, the AHP fellowship really was deliberately designed for African scholars to do research in African humanistic studies that have been sidelined all over the years. So it's an opportunity for you to take time off to focus on your research. So the process of application, therefore, has to be started early, as I've said. And finally, reference letters are very, very important. You just don't choose a referee haphazardly. You choose somebody, the best scholar in your field, who can really speak about you in a way that makes you competitive and puts you on the edge of success. So usually 3, and should these 3 not, you know, submit in time, you can politely remind them so that by the time of the deadline, all is available. So in short, as I complete this part of eligibility, what is important is that you do your part and do it very well. You should know the entire process, and you should know what to expect. I want to make the observation that usually we are the best judges of what we do. When you've done your work well, you know it yourself, even before somebody else does, that this work is well done. So investing in what you have to do is very, very important for you applicants. Now, let's move to the next important topic, which has to do with choosing a research topic. You know, it all starts with a plan. If you want to do something, if you want to go somewhere, you have a plan. Either it is in your mind or on a piece of paper, but you have a plan. But first, perhaps you must be really passionate and interested about what it is that you want to do. You have an idea and you have to think of, you know, realizing this idea. So when you begin to think in this way, somehow you begin to gather material, and even in terms of thought, to design the plan of how you want to achieve this particular research objective. So you have a clear sense of where you are going. Now, I like to use this image to say that, you know, when you begin your research, it may be such a rudimentary idea, just perhaps this block of wood here. There are questions in your mind, but you know, you have, you know, you want to direct this thought in a certain direction. For example, you want to turn this wood into something, but at this stage, you, the sculpture, the artist perhaps, is the only one who knows in your mind that what this wood is going to become. Those of us who see from outside may not see, but you see it a lot more clearly. But when you begin a research journey, you also want to recruit people along the way to come with you, because you are not going to stand alone in what you do. So you think of the tools you use to make this idea in your head realizable. Now, when you begin to work on the wood, for example, you invest your thought and creativity in that, you begin to interest people. When people begin to notice that actually these bits and pieces of things you are gathering is actually going in this direction. Just like this artist who is turning this wood into, you know, an image that is recognizable. You can see there, this is Mother Teresa with, you know, the kind of missionary engagement child down there. So you begin to recognize what a researcher is doing, and it begins to interest you when meaning begins to emerge out of the work of a researcher. Now, as you choose your research, definitely the initial plan shouldn't be rigid. You need an open mind that lets in ideas to reinforce or challenge the ones you have started with. You can change and reshape the direction of the research in the light of the new information you get as you go along. Now, from an individual interest, your research should be able then to speak to a rhetorical community. This is, of course, the imagined audience you have in mind. And in our case, the humanistic scholars, perhaps, or whichever category of people in your discipline-specific area that may be. So this is a community you are part of, a community that shares your values as a researcher, as a scholar, and whose values and ethics you speak to and operate within. You operate within their tradition and their philosophy, their theoretical frame. So in turn, you expect this rhetorical community that you are part of to be able to respond to your research. So your research then becomes part of a knowledge body. It does not stand alone. However interested you may be in what it is that you want to do, it must be related to others. Others should care about it. It should belong to a discipline. Perhaps it should be from a genre and of a theoretical tradition. Thus, you can take cognizance also of the other people in your field who have preceded you in that particular research community. So, a set of 3 related points should then ensure from your research. 1, is it interesting? And does it add new information? And will this, your imagined reader, find it interesting just as you are interested about it? I believe your passion, your interest in what it is you should do should be able to, you know, what they say is infect others so that they can really be drawn. You write and you engage people in a way that you can infect them with your enthusiasm. So is it a solution then to a particular problem? In applied research, of course, you know that it is an empirical, direct problem-solving kind of solution, like finding a cure for COVID. Or does your research answer an important question about humanity, as it is in the case of basic research where we deal with conceptual problems? Does it make you understand a particular situation better? Even when this situation is local, does it have the ripple effect that others can identify with, although it is located in that particular locality? So it should, in a way, make an inroad into appreciating the human condition better from the position in which you stand. You add your voice to the debate to invigorate the circle of knowledge that is existing in that discipline. And this causes the ripple that expands that body of knowledge. So I also want to mention that there are generally 2 positions that you take as a researcher. One is a position of being a colleague or an expert in relation to your reader or the research you're doing. You know, in the kind of our discipline-specific researchers, definitely we are speaking to our colleagues, a specialized group of people. You use technical language, you know, you are adding your voice to the broader that has already existed. But you could also write and research as an expert in a field where, you know, the language that you speak then should be conscious of the fact that there are people outside your discipline who should be able to understand. So you will explain concepts a little more amply. Now, the task of a researcher is to balance the 2 styles in every way, the ability to speak to specialists in the field, and also the ability to speak to colleagues outside the field. And I think this is one of the things that AHP assessment points to, that this research speaks to this category. So keep in mind your style that tempers both of these. To the people within your discipline, it will clearly be intellectually engaging and stimulating your colleagues, but it should also be accessible to those who are not in your field. Now let's move to the next topic, which brings me closer to my end, which is after locating your broad research field, then you're moving ever more closer to the point where you think of selecting a topic for your research. Now, you know, at whatever level you start your research, however tentative it is, there is some kind of topic that may be as solid, as thick, as big as political corruption, or mother-headed household, absentee husbands, women in politics, something like this. It's broad. Now, you draw from all possible sources to kind of research broadly on this topic. You draw from people, newspaper, personal experience, and you know, already researches that have been done and on the web, you know. So at this level, perhaps you are quite broad as you are trying to get a sense of what it is that is there. So what you find will help you frame later your niche and your new angle that you will add to this larger mosaic that I say you belong to as a scholar. So in selecting your topic, then you begin with general and background information on the topic. Yes, this means you choose a topic that allows you to find some material to understand it better. This is not to say that no researchers can be started. You cannot be, you know, a first timer in a research, but generally, broadly speaking, we choose really topics that have been already researched from different perspectives. So this is important because, you know, later on, as my colleagues will talk later, there is a segment that requires you to review literature. So at this stage, you may use tertiary data like encyclopedia that gives you overview, general, you know, browse. You browse, you know, web engines that give you a sense about this background of your study. No, and definitely if no enough material is found, then that's the stage at which you ask whether you have not cast this research too narrowly so that there's not enough information. If it is about political corruption, perhaps you may broaden it up to be corruption so that there is definitely going to be some material there. So you can always ask, of course, our friends, the librarians who are so informed of where to find general information and which section of your university library, which online links, and so on and so forth to get you started there. Okay, now, once you are done, you begin to focus your topic, you know, from the broad that you have been exposed to in that area. You know, when you are doing research, you gather so much information that you never ever use all of them for what it is that you are going to write. You now begin to focus your material to what is really manageable and available. We know that, you know, scholars have been asked to change their topic when there is no literature, for example, around the subject. So it is important that there is some material that you can review. I give here an example like of what will be unfocused, you know, topic for you to research that may not take you, you know, to where you exactly want to go. A topic like something like what is the effect of climate change on human development? This question may be just too broad for you to adequately respond within a certain time frame. In our case, we are working within a time frame of maximum 12 months. But if you get this question to something like focused, to read like, what traditional methods did the Baganda use to manage adverse weather conditions, for example? You can see that it's a little narrow, it's specific, you can see into it. So you can then focus definitely by geographical area, by cultural group, by time frame, disciplinary frame, or genre, but focus is very important as you move forward. It's usually difficult to research topics that are too locally defined. And I think we keep noticing this also, that this topic is too locally located. It's not written. This is not to say that what is local cannot be broadened or global, but if you frame it that way, it may not appeal to a wider audience. It may appeal to that little segment of community. And yet, in a discipline like ours, the humanistic that we're dealing with, other human beings elsewhere should be able to relate with what you are doing, even if it is focusing on a particular local culture. Now, again, the issue of having too recent a subject material is also challenging. But of course, we know that, you know, because the information you get may simply be not scholarly enough for you to engage with. But if you may ask, well, COVID-19 is talked of as a new disease, but really it's not. It's part of a variant of other viral diseases. So you've seen how much researchers have come out of it, researchers that build on similar viral diseases of the coronavirus brand and SARS and so on. So much as that segment may appear new, it's sitting on a much broader topic. Now, again, it's not so good to have broadly interdisciplinary topics. Sometimes we are so fascinated about what it is we want to do, and we cast out so broad, and our focus suffers then, because what you set out to do within a certain time frame may overwhelm you, and the research may be superficial, because researches of this nature that you invest time in and other people invest money in to fund really requires you to go deeper and frame in a way that you can do it. Similarly, popular topics, so they say, you are not likely to find the kind of intellectually engaging literature to review. So that's a very important thing to think of. Okay, again, the number 4 point in the selection of topics is, once your shape of what it is that you want to do begins to form, then you do generate keywords to help you focus your research even better. Keywords are very important because they help you focus and redefine your research, and it helps you locate other scholars in your research much better, and it helps you, see yourself contributing to a certain body of knowledge to which that keyword applies. And you can actually be found easily thereafter. You know that when you are writing journal articles, for example, it's a must that you should have a certain number of keywords, because people can locate your research so quickly and so find you, and so you can find others as well. Now, the 5th point, which is also equally important, is the point of being flexible. Yes, when you start research, really you are never quite done at any stage. Yes, you are always gathering information perhaps, so don't ring fence your ideas and topic too rigidly. In the course of doing your research, you may, be required, and usually often it's the case, to change, to rephrase, and perhaps to really recast the question altogether. And your preliminary readings help you to determine whether this research is too wide or too narrow, and therefore you want to open up or narrow down. Now, The sixth point, we're coming towards the end, which is to define topic as a research question. Now, we are soon getting to the part that will be taken over by my colleague. When you frame your research topic in such a way that it invites readers to begin thinking of your research problem, then you can begin to say that this is a research topic that is working, you know. I have just given a few examples here. For example, if my research topic is something like narratives of mother-headed households in Uganda, okay, perhaps a set of questions may begin to form in the mind, you know, such as, you know, whether this is a prevalent practice, or what do these mothers actually do to manage their households, and where indeed are their husbands since they are managing it alone? Are they victims of war? Is it whatever it is? Some questions begin to come to your mind, and those are questions of interest that also pull in your readers in a way, right from the way you frame your topic. And is the situation then similar to from one part to another? So what theories can be better used to understand this phenomenon, and so on and so forth. So defining your research topic in a manner that generates questions in the mind of whoever reads it is a very good thing. You realize a thing like this cannot be done in a rush. Yes. Okay. So this is the very last actually. So you focus your specific reading. Once all these preliminaries are done, you then move into deep research, where you can say that you are leaving no room unturned, because often in our disciplines, as my colleagues will take you through, you are required to give the latest literature in the area. So you really plow deeper now. You read more specialized journals as you create room for your own idiosyncratic voice to emerge. This is very, very important, that you are contributing your bit of the mosaic to the big knowledge body that you are part of. So before you construct your topic, which really begins to give a distinct identity of you as a scholar and your contribution to the field, you have to think through very, very carefully. This is the last slide. Now, because of its importance, selecting a topic should not be, again, done haphazardly. It is part of the complex journey that you started with an abstract idea, like that wood we saw at the beginning. Now, as you begin to chisel it, it becomes something that is fairly beautiful. I've just taken a couple of topics that my colleagues and I have written about in a book that I'm editing. For example, topics like this, you have seen from these examples I have here, moving back into the future. You know, if you leave a topic like that, it does not quite speak very well. So often you find people use colons to kind of refine and define it a little better, like critical recovery of Africa's cultural heritage. Or you could have, similar to the other one, that policing the environment and analysis of taboos. So in other words, the topic should be clear enough so that the persons who are beginning to encounter you from the topic begins to get a feel of what it is that you want to do. And so it engages them and it draws them into your work. And this is right, I'm right here. I think I've made use of my 30 minutes. I've just stopped at the point where in the program my colleague takes over from. So thank you very much for listening to me, and here I end. Hello, let me stop sharing. Yes,
hello,
please.
Yeah, we can hear you very well.
Yes. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Professor DPO, for that. Very, very, very. Thank you once again.
You're welcome.
We will go to the next shortly, which is a question and answer, and then the participants will be able to ask questions on any of the two presentations. But right now, we are lucky to have the presence of the Vice Chancellor of IBB University, Professor A.K. Adamu, who is with us. He eventually made it here, although his speech had been presented by his deputy. We would like the VC to come and say hello to our participants, especially our AHP mentors from outside the country. VC, sir.
Thank you very much, Professor Egan. Let me start by commending the Center for this innovative exercise and collaborating with the African Humanities Program. This is the first of its kind in IBB University of Lapai. We're highly delighted to partner and collaborate with the African Humanities Program, most especially with the seasoned professors, the mentors. I can see you are really impacting on the younger ones to actually come up with a research that is of high impact, not only to the IBB University of Lapai, but to the African countries in general. So I want to send my good message and thank you for this valuable objective. And I'm sure this is the beginning of partnership and collaboration with IBB University of Lapai. Once again, the great mentors, the participants, and the researchers. I wish you the very best and good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Vice Chancellor. We are very grateful to you. That is the Vice Chancellor of IBB University, who is very research friendly. For him to make our time to come here, it shows how important this workshop is to him. So, ladies and gentlemen, we are going to question and answer time. And I will open it to any participant can ask a question now, whether you are on Zoom or you are here physically. Simply indicate by raising your hand, indicate by showing your hand that you have a question, and then you will talk. Participants, you can also use the chat to write. You can also use the chat to write your question.
Good afternoon, good morning, everyone. My question is, okay.
Yes, please.
occasion. I want to most sincerely thank the Vice Chancellor for the keen interest he has in this occasion, despite the fact that his speech had been read earlier before his arrival here. Is still us. Now, one of the speakers, I think the last one, mentions certain assumptions, certain factors to bear in mind in choosing a topic. And one of such factors border on economic considerations. Now, sometimes it is said that man proposes, but God proposes. If on the prevailing situation, a researcher has chosen the topic, and along the line, the economic expectations and enhance completion of such a topic to its conclusion fall beyond expectations. My question is, in the absence of any other alternative, what does a researcher do in this difficult situation? Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Hello, Professor DPO. Did you hear that question? Okay, Dr. Mba, you have a question? Can you hear me, Dr. Mba?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay.
Hear you.
Okay, you can unmute and then you can hear me, right? Unmute and
yes, I can hear you.
And ask your question, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I just want to appreciate all the organizers. It has been a wonderful time being part of you in this training. Meanwhile, I have one general question to ask. I just want to know whether it is compulsory that the proposal should be on one's PhD work. Can it be on a fresh work? Although I have not published my PhD work. I just want to know. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes.
I can go ahead, right?
Yes.
Please, you asked if you can use your PhD work.
Yes, yes.
Professor Musilla. Hello, Professor Musilla.
Yes, I'm here. I'm listening.
Yeah, please, would you kindly respond to that question? And I can see some other questions in the chat.
Yes, yes, I've seen them as well. Thank you so much for that, and thank you to Prof. DiPio for that wonderful presentation as well. So to start with the last question, no, it doesn't have to be your project doesn't have to be based on your PhD work. I just gave the example of for people who are developing their work from the PhD project, which we see tends to be the case, but you can apply on the basis of absolutely any project of your choice. So it can be an entirely new project. There's no pressure or expectation for it to be based on your PhD work. And then from the chat, I see a couple of questions. The first one is whether you can include research questions. I think the question is whether you can have research questions in the, is it compulsory to make use of research questions in the AHP fellowship writing? I think if I'm hearing the question correctly, you're asking whether you need to have a list of research questions, the same way we normally have an entire section in PhD proposals with a list of research questions. The answer is no, not in the same format as a PhD proposal, although you still need to be able to signal what is your research question, what question are you engaging with. So it doesn't have to be presented as a whole list of research questions, but ultimately your proposal needs to be explicit about what exactly is it that you're setting out to respond to or to interrogate or to ask. So in a way, it's embedded in the project in itself, and it can be in the format of a list of questions, or it can be worked into your paragraph in the main in the main thesis of the proposal. So I hope that answers the question, but if it doesn't, you can specify in the chat and I'll respond again. Is it compulsory to follow the subheadings? I believe so, because the subheadings actually help you to really sharply structure your proposal. So I think I haven't looked at the current version of the application form, but I think the application form is already structured in such a way that you need to insert these different sections in there. So in a way, there is an expectation that you follow the specific subheadings, because if you don't follow the specific subheadings, the reader does not know what is going on where. So there's a bit of, these are basically guidelines on what you need to say in which part of your proposal. And I think I've answered those three questions. I think the question on funding, which I didn't catch very nicely, but I believe it was directed to Prof. DP. I hope she had it better than I did. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Chair, can I come in a little, and I'll request you to kindly rephrase the question on funding, which I didn't hear. But I would like to just emphasize what Professor Musilla has ably said about structuring. Really structuring the proposal makes it easy for you to respond and to arrange and organize your thoughts and fit it within those frames that are provided. It's actually a way of making it easy for you to indeed, there are some people who end up writing proposals that do not follow the headings and so on, but the readers struggle with it, and you ask where does this belong and so on. So it's a way of helping you to make sure that it's just 2 pages, basically. So if you go without any structure, it can become very complicated. And that's the experience I have also with even applications that I've just read that are not structured. There's such a clear difference between those who have structured and those who have not. So it makes things easy that way. Kindly rephrase that question on finance and funding, please. Are we frozen? Oh dear.
Hello, Sister
Yes,
Dominic.
please. Yes, please.
Hello.
Hello, hello. Can you hear me?
Yeah, there's a problem with the.
Oh dear, sorry. Oh, sorry. Oh, sorry.
Okay.
Yes.
Sister
Yes.
Dominic, have you finished talking?
Yes, I've finished talking.
All right. Thank you. Thank you very much. I would like the other AHP mentors, Professor Okoye and Professor Nielu, to respond to any of the questions.
Yeah, thank you very much. I hope you can hear me. I just
I can hear you, but not loud.
Okay.
Yeah, it's good now.
Okay, thank you very much. Just two of the questions. Somebody asked a question on the PhD thesis, whether you can turn the PhD thesis or you can revise the PhD thesis for the fellowship. Yes, but that's not the only possibility. And I won't say more than that for now because I think I'll be addressing that tomorrow. The second thing has to do with, the second question has to do with whether one should retain the subheadings. I want to say yes, and I said I want to stress that in the uppercase. In actual fact, I think it's important for every applicant to recognize the fact that this is a competition, and the average, every assessor is invited to rate the work of every applicant with the others. And so there must be common indices for assessment. And so what the AHP expects is that you specifically respond to those questions and structure your proposal in a manner that you address these various components of the application. And it's on the basis of that that you'll be assessed. I am sending a guideline which is available on the website of ACLS to the convener of this workshop so he can make it available to participants. It's very, very useful because I think the ACLS is guiding participants. This particular document gives you instruction as to what you are to write under each one of these. And so that is very, very important. So you don't just bring any proposal anywhere and write. You can imagine the kind of chaos that we would experience if everybody were to just do anything and then submit. So, and that is a trend now. Every funding agency gives instruction as to how your proposal should be prepared. That will make it convenient for those who are going to assess your application to judge the strength of your work in relation to other submissions. Thank you very much.
Hello, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Professor Austin Enielu, please go ahead.
Okay, I have already responded to some on the chat. But somebody asked, the no name there, not chat. They have one for the fellowship last and what determines the length. I think it's a minimum of 10 months and maximum of so what determines the length is you actually what you want to do. But of course, you are going to share your time between, if you are doing a new project, you're going to share your time between researching and writing. manuscript. You know, so what can you take within that time? But the minimum, I think the minimum of 10 months, but not more than a year, 12 months. And then somebody asked that must we follow the main sessions, main thesis, literature and sources? Yes, you should follow them because they're templates. You know, and, so other ones I've answered on the chat box. Thank you.
Okay, all right. Thank you. I see a number of questions on the chat here. Maybe I can answer one or two on in the chat. One is, can I go ahead?
Please go ahead, Sister Dominic.
Okay. All right, there is a question about how can a candidate convert his or her PhD to a book? Can it be recognized and accepted for the fellowship? And I think this has been responded to. But when you make your application and you indicate that you are going to convert your PhD into a manuscript for publication, it's not enough to just stop at, you know, saying that you are going to convert. What does it mean to convert? Indeed, as you said, it means you are going to do some work. When you do a PhD under supervision, you follow certain guidelines. Perhaps you follow also texts and directives from your supervisor. But this is the opportunity for you, perhaps to tear your PhD apart, to reinvigorate it with new information, to restructure the chapter, drop out some things and include others. So you clearly state what it is that you are going to. It involves revisionary work. So it's allowed, but you are not in your proposal just going to say, I'm going to revise my PhD and leave it at that. You have to clearly indicate what new things you are going to add in there during this period. And then one says, at what point does it become a dissertation completion? Is it after the PhD coursework or after the candidate had proposed his or her institution? Okay, let me give a shot to this and other colleagues will also come in. I know for sure that this year we are not having applicants going for dissertation completion. But in this guideline that Professor Okunoya has pointed to, it's very clear this time what a dissertation completion application should be. It will require that you are really towards the completion of your thesis. It will require that you have written perhaps all your first draft so that it's properly a completion. This decision has come about because over the years, it was realized that people will not be quite at the stage of completion. They will be maybe having done their 1 or 2, you know, chapters, and the whole 3 or 4 are still there. And in the new frame, this has been redefined to be work that is almost complete, and the supervisors can attest to this, that this work is really at this stage of completion, and this person just needs time to revise it, to clean it, and so on and so forth. Thank you. Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I know some people may have more questions, but we will have to reserve the questions to afternoon session. At this point, we will take a break. It is 5 minutes to 12 here in Nigeria. We are going to take a break for 1 hour, and then we will reconvene by 1 o'clock in the afternoon, Nigeria time. And at 1 o'clock, we will immediately have breakout rooms for the AHP mentors to interact directly with the participants. Those participants whose application, the draft proposals we are not giving to AHP mentors, I think we have 2 or 3 of them. You can join, we will put you in some rooms and you just listen in to the conversation and possibly ask questions. But I am assuring you that all draft proposals will be eventually attended to. We will read them and send comments to you eventually. So I would like to thank you all for making this morning session a wonderful one. And I hope that by 1 o'clock you will join and we will have a smooth breakout session so that we can conclude on a very good note today. Thank you so much for being here and thank you so much for being part of this. And I look forward to seeing you at 1. So bye-bye now and enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. Thanks.
So welcome back to the afternoon session, which is going to be a breakout session. The ICT man is already breaking out. The group breaking us into separate rooms. So you will see, I think something will appear on your screen asking you to accept the breakout or to join a room. Then you kindly accept it, and then you find yourself in the room that you are supposed to be. So we have already arranged for each participant to be in any of the 4 rooms that are created, which the rooms are going to be led by Professor DPO, Professor Musilla, Professor Emielu, and Professor Koye. So please just hold on a bit while we break you into the groups. And there is one small announcement regarding the breakout group. We are going to spend maximum of 1 hour, 30 minutes in the breakout group. And this time is automatically set so that once you have spent 1 hour, 30 minutes, the breakout room will close. So please work within the 1 hour, 30 minutes. Whatever you cannot finish today, remember that tomorrow we are starting also with a breakout room. So some will be done today and some will be tomorrow. So please, I suggest to the AHP mentors to set their time at 1 hour, 30 minutes for the breakout. From the time that they get your breakout, you get your room, so that we do not exceed the time. Then after the breakout, after 1 hour, 30 minutes, we will all return to the hall and share 1 or 2 things before we close. Thank you.
settled population
I'm going to stop now.
Hi everyone.
Oh, yeah. You think about that.
One meeting.